Welcome back to The Manual, podcast where we talk about the stuff most men's podcasts are too afraid to touch. Today's episode is going to be wild, raw, and real. Buckle up. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to The Manual. We have officially closed an era, a chapter of our lives together. We are no longer talking about the nice guy. And we're moving on to something that Nick introduced me to that I'm super excited to dig into. We were just sharing a little bit off mic before we hopped on here. I think I'm particularly excited because there's a lot of wisdom and gold in this book on a very relevant topic and discussion that I think, especially in broader culture around the drinking table, poker table, where men are gathering in real life, I don't think this topic comes up very much. And so I think it's continued to be neglected, and men are desperate for it, as Sam Jolman lays out. We're going to go through Sam Jolman's book titled The Sex Talk You Never Got. And his goal, as he discusses in the introduction and that we're going to discuss today, before he dives into some of the practicals in chapter 1, is really about the lack of formation that we received in this area of our masculinity. So I'm super excited. I think it's a deeply, obviously relevant personal topic to every one of us. We're going to get going on that in just a second, and I'll read a little bit of an introduction here in a second as a way to get us to dive deeper into that. First, before we do that, Nick, I didn't tell you we were going to do this, but I monitor our YouTube channel closely.
Yeah, you do.
As it goes, I get notifications on our side of when people like or comment. So I pulled the two most recent comments because I think both of them
people are actually commenting.
People are actually commenting.
Wow.
And the first one is a question. And the second one is a delightful statement that, to be honest, I have been laughing at to myself since I read it. So there's one other that I tried to dig up that was similar. It basically was, in essence, again, I can't say it verbatim because I couldn't find it prior to this, but it was something like, and this is the reason why not everyone should have a microphone. Something to that effect. A beautiful trolling statement on the internet, always appreciated. But I'm gonna start with the lighter one, and I'll move into the question because I think the lighter one here from Ron Lake 4754 is funny to me personally. He says, "Nobody is going." He's I believe talking to me. I think that's pretty clear with my mop top. Nobody is going to take you seriously with that wispy ass mop top. It's time to shave it. So, Ron, you have guilted me into wearing a hat today.
You're not wrong, Ron.
That's right. I don't know. Both of us put on hats subconsciously or consciously as a result of your delightful trolling comment, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
Yes, I do have male pattern baldness. I am working to correct it, and as soon as I do, Ron, you will be the first to know. So I appreciate your kind words.
Sure, there's a peptide for that.
That's right. The second one comes from Thunderissa Boss 2725. He said, "I'm addicted to self-help concepts. I spend all my money on books, seminars, online courses, etc.
Yeah,
it's
been there.
Destroying me.
That's good.
Can you help me?"
No, Thunderissa. We can't help you. Well, praise God. I mean, I love that. I love his public confession. There was absolutely a season where I was very aware that I have a problem with my addiction to self-help or a compulsion to self-help material. Like, I don't know how much time I wasted searching online, reading articles on how not to waste time and how to get my life in order. So one, acknowledgement, that's huge. But I think the question, I mean, a little serious, like the question is indicative of this reality that one of our favorite books, Joe, Addiction and Grace, is to be alive is to be addicted, and to be addicted is to be in need of God's grace, where ultimately, if there's what's the legitimate need going on there? I'd be interested in some thought patterns, sitting down with you to hear what's undergirding it, right? Because there's probably a hole that can never be filled by more blogs or more, Michael Hyatt books or Jocko Willing to pick your self help. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but there's probably some identity and belief systems that you're operating out of that I certainly have been. And it's been helpful to have you, Joe. Like, there's nothing like some good premature deployment. Like, I think I'm never ready. I think there's always more, and there's some goodness to it. Like it's not like all bad or all not, all bad or all good. It's a mixed bag where there's some goodness to be like there's probably a lifelong learner within you. You want to keep growing, but what's undergirding it? What are some thoughts that you're thinking about yourself, believing about yourself that are driving the compulsion? That's an initial stab at it. What
Yeah,
thoughts come to mind for you, Joe?
yeah, two things come to mind for me. One is this searching that I think so many are doing today, myself included, you as well, for wholeness. That we grew up in an era where, especially if you grew up in a religious context, wholeness
Right.
was very much secondary, if it existed at all, to the principles and ideas and concepts of displayed holiness. And I think in the attempt to be able to develop some integration in our lives, we overcompensate, right? The pendulum swings, right? And my firm belief is that you can't have one without the other, right? And that's what you're talking about. Identity is we have to be able to find the creator, the relationship, an understanding of who we are at the same time that we develop how to live in fullness, and that
Hmm.
the two can't happen separately. The second thing that comes to mind is really why our Kingmakers community exists. Make a plan for your life, an intentional plan. What are you committing to? A long-ranging view. Where do I actually want to get to? Where do I want to be? Which I think there's probably some there as well, as a lack of purpose of like, what am I trying to aim for? Because then you don't know, like, would this practice on a daily basis help me get there or not? Right? I mean, this is the Alex Hormozy talks about this all the time, of like the 3-hour morning routine. Like, if your goal is to make twice as much money as you're currently making, for most people, a 3-hour morning routine isn't going to help. You should spend those 3 hours working, right? You'd be far more likely to get to your outcome if that's your goal, right? But is your principal goal to heal? And so we have to have some sense of what is the goal, what's the aim, what's the outcome that I'm shooting for, and then the ability to be able to narrow down based off of that what you need to include in your life and what you need to exclude. And then it's movement and accountability, right? You need to start doing the work, right? It has to be practical application of the seminar, of the conference, of the course, of the material, of the wisdom, of the principle. Go do it, right? And you can't do it all at
Yeah.
once, right? You can't change everything. It's not about overturning every rock. It's okay, what 3 rocks this next quarter am I overturning? And then that's where the accountability piece, if it lives, I mean, especially for me, if it lives inside my own head, it ain't happening. I mean, I just had this conversation at my wife and I's last husband-wife meeting, where we make a list of topics that we need to discuss over the course of a week, and then we sit down for an hour or two and work through those topics, right? And some of them are about issues that need to be sorted out and solved, conflict that needs to be resolved, et cetera. And then some of them are like, hey, I need to do blank. Would you like that? Would you like to do that with me? Or I'd like accountability in doing that. And for me, it was around spending. That, you know what, I actually realized that I'm finding myself oftentimes purchasing wants, not needs. And for a month, I want to detox that. And so what I asked of her this past Sunday was, for all of April, I don't want to purchase any wants. And I'm making that commitment of, I'm asking myself, anytime I'm making a buying decision, big or small, is this a want or a need? And I want you to hold me accountable to that. Right? And that can, it does that matter in the grand scheme of 12 months if I go back to spending the way that I spent in March or February or January, if I go back to that in May and beyond? Well, no, but it's a step in the right direction for finding
Yeah.
balance. It's the same thing I did with the 8-week nutrition plan that we give guys. Like a pretty intensive intermittent fasting, keto only diet. for 8 weeks, but it did help me establish consistent routine in my life that don't look like that level or a rigor or intensity or restriction, but have significantly helped me change the way that I eat. I used to go to, "Oh, I'm hungry. I'll stop at name your fast food restaurant on the way home from work and grab a burger." Now for me, it's like, "No, I'm not gonna do that." And it's way easier than it used to be because I developed in the context of following a plan for 8 weeks that helped me lose almost 50 pounds. It helped me develop some internal composition for this is how I want to live in this area of my health, in that domain of my life. So that's the other thing that comes to mind for me is having a plan and sticking to that plan. And it can be even helpful on the front end of that plan to deal with it in some level of intensity and then figure out how you iterate beyond it. So those are our comments. Guys, y'all I have no idea who those two people are. I don't think they know us.
Underisa.
Keep commenting. We look forward to responding to your cheeky comments as well as your serious heart level comments. We
Any
appreciate you guys.
PR is good PR for
That's
the
right.
algorithm. We'll
That's
take
right.
it.
I am not cutting my hair because of you, Ron. Ron Lake. Deal with it. I will wear a hat today for you, though, in your
Yeah.
honor. Okay. The introduction to Sam Jolman's book sets the stage for a deeply personal and culturally honest reckoning with how most of us were shaped or misshaped
Yeah.
by the silence, shame, and distortion surrounding sexuality. Jolman frames this not as a self-help fix, but as an invitation to healing and wholeness rooted in a theology of the body and a robust view of human desire.
Mm.
Nick, as a way of introducing the introduction, there's some quotes that again, they're pretty high level because he's introducing the book, but I want to spend some time on throwing back and forth and seeing where they landed, seeing where they stuck for you and I. The first one is this. Most of us didn't get a sex talk. We got silence, a few clinical facts, or a shame-soaked warning. What we needed was formation. One of the things he also said that's, longer and not quite as grabby than that, but he really said, we don't need a talk. We need hundreds of
Right. Exactly.
conversations.
Yeah,
And I
that's right.
really loved that because I think a lot of times we think if we're raising young kids or raising kids coming of age into adolescence, we're kind of thinking as parents or for ourselves, like, what was the talk that I needed? And so
Mhm.
I appreciated that reframe is like, you didn't need a talk. You needed hundreds of conversations where the discussion around sexuality was permitted, that you were able to do that and to wrestle and to, in age appropriate ways, to be able to discuss and solve as you become aware of these things, how you want to live them and live them well. What strikes you about that statement that he made?
Well, yeah, what you said for sure. What we needed was formation, and formation isn't just a one-time thing. Although there are key moments along the way of a rite of initiation or a rite of passage or a process of formation where it's an open door. It's, like young men don't become or young boys don't become men by reading it in a self-help book or hearing a message or being talked to once. It's shoulder to shoulder with your dad, open door policy conversation. You're able to ask questions. You're able to name things. You're able to talk about stuff. You're able to use the words, actually, anatomically correct words, which he talks about that. I'm pretty sure in the introduction, that's really important to call it a penis and to call it a vagina. And it's kind of funny when you hear a 3-year-old call it a penis or a vagina, but it's really important. I remember we started doing it I think with two, it was three. I was with our friend Michael Chachow at a retreat, and they were talking about the importance of calling it by its anatomically correct name for other reasons. They said one of the reasons they said was it doesn't uphold in the court of law. Hoo hoo or ding dong doesn't up. I'm like, oh, that shit. hate thinking about that. But just for like when you don't name something, he talks about like shame can come in. And he talked about blessing. I know we're going to talk about these things today, but the power words are powerful. And talking about blessings, like we're called to bless our sexuality. And if we don't get a talk, and I'm sure, and I know we're going to talk about it today, what it looked like for us when we got silence or facts, or you're going to pick stuff up. And so you hear things at school. It can just when there's a void, shame comes in, and a lot of us didn't get what we needed. And I think our parents, our dads especially, they know that it's their role, right? But because they often didn't get it, it'll just kind of come out sideways. One of the stories in the book is this kid walking down the stairs and his I don't know, he's maybe 14, 15, sometime age in high school, and his dad tosses him some condoms. And he says, just don't get her pregnant. And that was it. And so I'll land the plane with saying, we need those moments. I look forward to the day when I'm going to take, my son out for like a weekend camping trip, and there's lots of different good ways I've heard of people doing it, and I mean it's always going to be slightly awkward, but these moments are important, but also opening up the conversation. Next thing. That he actually quoted this woman Peggy Ornstein in her book Boys and Sex. She says the core issue with girls is that they were cut off from their bodies, and then he says the core issue with boys is that they seem to be cut off from their hearts. That boys were cut off from even as an adult, even now. As I'm wrestling through this stuff, I'm aware like there's like this dissociation or disconnection, especially when I come together with Teresa, where the whole goal is connection and to stay in touch with my heart because there's a battle to go there, and boys are just cut off. And Sam commenting on that, he says the problem isn't too much male sexuality because he's writing a book. The subtitle is "Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality." He's like, do we really need another book on male sexuality? He's like, the problem isn't that there's too much. The problem is that there's too much sexuality, that there's too little heart. So, Joe, I'd be interested in your comments on that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, what is that distinction between what's the lived experience of being cut off from your bodies versus cut off from your heart? I think the distinction that's interesting to me is one sounds like repression, like inaccessible sexuality, right? Or excessive sexuality where your body is doing one thing and you are somewhere else. In the case of a woman, and again, I'm just trying to imagine what does that experience feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to be an adult female or a young adult female and to experience this cutoff from your body reality, as well as what does it feel like to be cut off from your heart, right? And I what does that feel like for most of us? I mean, I think it feels like sex acts that feel like something hidden and shameful, meant to be kept in hiddenness and darkness,
Yeah.
or to be brought into the light through joking and locker room talk and
Right.
making it something out that doesn't feel good to you either. Right. And then how does it manifest when, like you just talked about in your own life, when it becomes permissible? And now you have to figure out how to do this thing that you very much want to do and this domain of your life that you very much want to express, but can feel like mechanical and something to get out of the way quickly. That the
Yeah.
romance is lost, that the endeavor, the engagement, etc., is lost from it and devoid from it. And so, again, how to be able to have that in a way that actually feels like wholeness and integration versus disconnection and disunity with your person. And, I'd be really interested to read her book to be able to better understand. To be honest, some of that is a little hazy to me of what does that distinction really clearly look like, where women experience it predominantly in this divorce between self and body, and men experience it predominantly in heart and their personhood. But I also think on a gut level, it does check out that really going back to what he said, that something in me feels malformed. And to be honest with you, most of the career decisions, relationship decisions, I think have been trying to put together the pieces of finding my heart in the
Yeah.
areas of my sexuality. So for me, reflecting on it for me personally, without much of the words of being able to express that in a really understandable, principled way, checks out for me.
It's a one thing that another word that comes to mind is is a rejection of. So there's like a rejection of my body due to shame or a rejection of my heart due to just repression of desire. He talks a lot about how, sexuality and sensuality are different, or how do we distinguish between lust and desire? 'Cause sometimes I hear guys talking, I'm like, that's actually just desire. That's sexual. There's nothing wrong with that, but part of it's purity culture, especially if we grew up in the church. In his book, John Elder's book, The Journey of Desire, he talks a lot about this. Like, we have duty, shut down desire. He quotes C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis says, "We've castrated the gelding, the horse. We castrated him and bid him be fruitful." So it's like, do the things that you're called to do as a man, but actually shut down your heart. Implicitly or explicitly, we've been told that your desires are bad. Shut down your heart. So another word that comes to mind is more of a rejection of, or maybe from a young age, you had these desires or dreams, and somewhere along the way, you were told that those are bad and those, so we shut them down. That's another kind of piece that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's really good. I wanna ask a question because he spends the first really the first several pages of the book just telling stories of guys he's worked with and their stories of the sex talk they got.
Hmm.
And it I think a great sort of smattering of different ways that this is either permission without blessing, like he said,
Right.
morality only, mechanics only, or nothing. Hey, let me know if you need. I think two of the stories, one from a mom, one from a dad, was if you ever have any questions about it, let me know, and
Right.
nothing else,
Yeah.
and never talk about it again. So the question I have for you is what was the sex talk or absence of one that you actually got growing up? And what was the loudest message, spoken or unspoken, that you received about your sexuality?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there were things that were said in youth group or the organization I was raised in, but at home, I recall vividly, and I was probably a freshman in high school at this point. And unfortunately, we have to have these conversations earlier and earlier, just give what young boys are being exposed to and where they're just going to hear it with accessibility to information, certainly online, but just anywhere, just from their peers. But I think I was a freshman, 14 or 15 years old, and I walked into my room, and on my desk, I had never had we had a conversation around sex or uh, puberty, my sexuality, but I saw this book, and it was a picture of, I think it was a cartoon picture drawing of a boy basically looking down, and the title of the book was "What's Happening to Me?" Something to that effect. And I looked at it, and I remember I was pissed. I was like, "Are you effing kidding me?" Like, and looking back, tons of compassion for my parents. My dad, he never had it, and so how do you give what you didn't receive? That's a real thing. But to acknowledge what the 14 or 15-year-old Nick felt was like, are you kidding me? And so like I've already been hearing all this stuff, and so I think what that I mean that absence, there was certainly that anger was covering what was that anger covering a longing to be fathered, like the heart of it, to be initiated. Because I mean, in middle school, I remember I went from the Catholic school into seventh grade. I went to the public school. In seventh and eighth grade, all of a sudden, I'd like have a girlfriend with like all of a sudden Megan Zinker and I are a girlfriend and boyfriend. I'm like, what does this mean? I don't know what I'm doing. And I went to a movie and with a group, and I'm like dating one of these girls, and I'm like, I don't know what I do. So I think I should put my arm around her. And I put my arm around her for this 2 hour long movie of Austin Powers that we snuck into. And my arm was like dead halfway through the movie. I'm like, I got to keep it here. Like, I'm just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So there was this lostness, both around just like who I am, the sexual, the stuff happening within me. So ultimately, just zero talk did I have. I never read that book. And the last thing that comes to mind is, uh, well, I had it. Well, ultimately, I literally believed this sophomore year that sex is only you only have sex if you're gonna have a baby. And so I literally thought when I was like probably even a sophomore in high school that my parents, like especially if you're Christian, you only have sex to have a baby. So my parents had sex 5 times and that was it. Just because there was in the absence, nature abhors a vacuum. So you feel these thoughts and you're like you feel silly, you're walking through life. And so there was not much. I'd be interested with you, Joe. What did that look like for you? What did the sex talk look like? What did that conversation or lack thereof look like for you? And what were the messages you heard?
Yeah, I don't remember where I was, but I remember 11, 12, 13 years old, 2 things happening. One was a event at our church that occurred that was largely around coming of age mechanics.
Hmm.
Really nothing about sex, sexuality, having sex. As far as I remember, it was all, here's what's gonna happen to your body. Here's the
Okay.
changes you can expect. And really there was really no discussion. It was all like sitting in a talk with your dad around a bunch of other dads and their sons of a similar age. And it was put on by some organization or something. But I remember that event. And then I remember the talk with my dad, and he read a Catholic book. He told me later on he had read a Catholic book that told him how to do it. And what it told him was that you should tell your kids that sex is babies come from 2 adults hugging each other really close, and that's how a baby's made. And that was the sex talk I got. And I remember being in that, not a discussion, a one-sided
Yeah.
conversation, while me being
Yeah.
feeling very awkward.
Yeah. I just
I
want to
rem
acknowledge real quick. I laughed, but it's important. Some of these things are funny, but actually it's real stuff. Like
Well, it's
I
funny.
just want to,
I mean, I
it's,
have a similar emotion connected
yeah,
to it. It is funny,
but keep going.
but I remember thinking, "I'm looking at porn. I
Yeah.
know what sex is, but I can never say that out loud."
Yeah. Wow.
Really, what I internalized is my dad's lying to me,
Hmm.
which means that I'm not supposed to know, but I do. Never tell the truth. That's what I internalized from that conversation. And really, that's what played out in my young adulthood was never tell anyone about the things that I'm doing with other people or in that sexually
Yeah.
or in what I'm doing on the internet with myself. And that really that sort of deeply embedded that don't talk about it because you're not supposed to know. And yeah, I think the that was the loudest message that sort of resonated with me is I'm not supposed to know, like I am not supposed to, like I don't have permission to know about this, basically. Because our internet was, they attempted to lock it down, as we hear all the times with guys we work in. Like
Right.
we found ways around it. And there was very little, if any, sexual material available to us. Magazines, like, it was like the classic, like
Hmm.
thrown away, left out, not left out, etc. Um, and there was no sexual expression between my parents apart from a kiss, a brief hug after work, that there was really no sense of the development of flirtation. So I resonate with what you said about, sort of the Wild West of like just figure it out, and where are you getting that
Yeah.
information from? Peers, movies, online chats, maybe a conversation here and there with good buddies, that were more, I don't want to say formed in the sense that they had better talks or formation from their parents, but that they were more formed than me in that they were behaving better than I was at that point in my life, in this area. So yeah, I think that's
Interesting.
what stands out.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. He He talks a lot about shame and throughout the book as like the dominant language of sexuality for most people. As I already said, like where there's a vacuum, or the absence of care and the absence of naming and the absence of a conversation, shame can come in and haunt a lot of us. I just be interested, Joe, for you as you look at your story, as you're reading through this book. And I mean, what's cool about the stories that come up is I'm thinking of my own story, and hopefully, listener, for you as well, as we share throughout this series of parts of our story. Hopefully, some of your own story comes up and you're able to look at it and feel it. But Joe, for you, can you identify a specific belief, whether about your body or about your sexuality or desires that you absorbed through shame in your life, and maybe even now that you're still kind of unlearning?
The keep it hidden was, I think, the predominant one.
Yeah.
The don't tell anyone. I mean, especially in trying to do the work, the keep it hidden was such a powerful mode of operating that learning to start to tell my story from a narrative standpoint over the course of my life,
Hmm.
but learning to tell or talk about what I'm currently experiencing, what I desire, what I'm really after and looking for,
Yeah.
has either escaped me that I don't even know, or that has just been inaccessible to me, and that uh there's great resistance to opening up and being honest about that. This is what I've done, if it's something that I've done that I shouldn't have done, or this is what I desire, if it's something that I'm longing for and want to express. Yeah, I think that's would be the biggest thing that I've seen show up again and again in my own
Yeah.
life, is that keep it hidden narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a little bit of me kind of speculating and, trying to connect the dots. But as I look back at my high school years and all the way up until now, it's interesting the quoting Peggy earlier, Ornstein, about girls being cut off from their bodies. But there's a lot of body shame I even had, which is a weird thing to say. Um, uh, as a man, but whether it's feeling like I'm a toothpick, but or thinking that my penis is actually small, or because you see, first porn video I ever saw was Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson, and his penis was massive. I'm like, holy golly, I'm about half that size, and so there's like shame there. And as I look at a lot of my behavior in life, drugs I took, didn't care about my body, even basically took performance enhancing drugs that were at one point legal, but then they became illegal. I basically took steroids because I'm like, I underline it. If I believe that there is self hatred, certainly shame, driven by shame. You could say self contempt. Self hatred sounds like a strong word, but I think that's actually it. Like, I actually don't care about my body. I actually don't give a shit about this temple. And a lot of behavior, I think, for me, as I look at it, reveals a lot of underlying, certainly shame and beliefs about my body, and really your body. And I'll let you talk a lot. I know we're running out of time here. We can talk about it later, but how the body isn't an obstacle to the spiritual life, but you mentioned the theology of the body, but it's like the site, the place where we were called to encounter God. And it's one of the ways we reveal the imago Dei. And just a little bit more here. I mean, even with the woman that I lost my virginity to, we dated for 4 years. It got to the point to where I was treating my body so horribly with basically taking this testosterone stuff for so many years that I basically wasn't even able to maintain an erection with her. And I'm like, and then you get in your head there. And Joe, I don't know if you remember this, but we were at this one healing mass one time. This has been 10 years ago at least. And no, probably 12 years ago, and we're praying. And my deepest fear is that I'm actually not going to be able to maintain an erection when I get married because of what I've done to my body, what I've done to my hormones. And I've actually experienced erectile dysfunction in the moment of trying to have sex with my girlfriend. I'm like, oh, so I'm well into my conversion. I have this, and you have this vision of me married with all these kids running around, and you're so confident praying this over me. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. I'll claim it. But this like self-hatred, fear of my own sexuality, lies about my own body and my penis, just to be explicit, but then into marriage. And there's still more, like still today, 7.5 years into marriage, there's still more healing. And it's by being honest, it's by being exposed, it is by so much of the marital act for me is getting out of my head and into my heart. I think so many guys that struggle with erectile dysfunction and some guys that have come to us, so much of it is psychological. It's how you're looking at yourself. It's the lies we're believing. And it's again, it is this reconnecting
Yeah.
with the heart.
Yeah, that's so good, and it prevents you from doing. I mean, reading this chapter, I was thinking about so many guys who are having very little sex in their marriages, are struggling in any number of ways, whether it be valid reasons their wife is having physical stuff coming
Sure.
up, or like various manifestations of a disintegrated sex life. Not what they dreamed about, not what they desired, certainly not what they were hoping for when they signed up for their marriage, and just longing for the restoration of that, the
Yeah.
longing for the ideal sex life, the kind of, it's like, I'm sure the general public doesn't believe Catholics have the best sex. Data supports it and backs it up, that we have the most and the best, most fulfilling. But that's the purely in the sexual arena. Like, there is great hope
Yeah.
and goodness here for the fulfillment there. And it begins, like, at different times you're talking about experiences that you've had, or when you were talking about just like talking about anatomy, things that we've applied in our family life of,
Yeah.
all of our kids, 9, 6, 4, and we have a 9-month-old. They, like some of it is kind of following along with what our daughter is coming of age into, like crushes, and she like has a boy at school that she has a crush on, and just and like giving permission for her to have a crush and have discussion around that of like, that's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah.
it's hilarious. It's like, you read the literature, it's like around 3rd grade, girls start to notice boys and vice versa. And it's like so fun to watch it play out without the morality of like, oh, no, no, no,
Right.
you're not
You can't do
allowed to
that.
do that. You can't do that.
Shut it
Like,
down.
like, and there's the ability in us to be able to be like, why did God create you like that? Why is that happening right now? Like, you're not going to get married tomorrow. Like, why are you noticing boys now? And, led to some such fun conversations. And there's playfulness with it, which is a chapter we're going to
Yeah.
get to later that I think is so important, of like
That's
her
good.
ribbing the younger boys about like, who's your crush? Or like, did you write your crush's name down today? Because I wrote my crushes. And she's like, has these little notes that she writes to him and never gives him. And at one point she was collecting all, like, every can we have. We love Ollipops and Poppy in our house. And she pulls off every pop tab on cans and like, oh, I'm giving this to him because he collects them and sells them because he gets money. Like, they're like, she wants to do stuff for him and like wants to be a part of his world. Like, and I feel strongly that he ain't gonna be the one, but
Right.
like, that's formation.
Yeah.
That the stuff she is experiencing and desiring is like
Yeah.
so good and necessary now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that she has it later,
And she's
you
inviting you
know?
guys into it, which is huge.
Total. And it's around the dinner table, and like, we've spent whole dinners talking about this kid and talking about desire and
Yeah.
dating and marriage, like
Wow.
that's the playing field. Like, that's one of the formation conversations that he's talking about in the book, that I'm like, that doesn't start when she goes through puberty as a 11 to 13-year-old. Like, we've had 20 of those conversations over the past year, and even before that, like, to be able to bring some of the anatomy in it. There's these great books that I don't know the names of them, but we have them on our shelf upstairs that are age specific
Is
for
it good pictures,
boys.
bad pictures?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If I remember to grab and bring
Yeah.
it to one of these episodes, I'll certainly shout it out. But just like stuff like that, where it's like, again, restoring the goodness,
Yeah.
letting it be their lead while also not putting it on them of like, well, Maddie, if you ever have any questions about dating, let me know.
Right.
Like, that's
Yeah,
not
put that
helpful.
burden on them, right.
Yeah. It's like, no, like, when she brings it up, kids are testers, right? They're always testing the boundaries of what's permissible, what's accessible, what am I able to do here? And just like allowing that while also leading in it has just been, it's been so fun and enriching and good for and restoring my own sexuality, the way that and I think filling some of those voids of what I wasn't given. So there's so much here more to talk about. I'm excited that we're going to be talking about this for weeks and weeks to come as we go through this book, one chapter at all, because I think these themes are going to come up over and
Yeah.
over and over again. I just want to land our conversation today with an invitation for our listeners. And as we did so often with the nice guy, there's some reflection to be done here. Maybe you're thinking about your own story as we've shared some of ours. And we'll continue to do that and go deeper into our own stories and experience, as well as draw up principles and guidance as is helpful. But the question I have for you is, what is one message, spoken or silent, that shaped how you see your sexuality? And where did that message come from? And is it one you want to carry forward?
That's good.
Right? As Sam says, in the absence of care, shame comes to haunt us. So we want to encourage you that, again, I always think about in coaching guys, shame drives me to look away. I just did something sinful or it's something that I hate or that disgusts me. I just looked at stuff that now that I'm out of the passion and desire for it, I am disgusted by. And I want to just move on and avert my vision. And guilt invites me to look at it. So
That's
look at
good.
it. Look at it, both the pain as well as the goodness. What's one message, spoken or silent, that shaped how you see your sexuality, and where did that message come from? And is it one you want to carry forward? Y'all, we're so grateful that you're coming on this journey with us. We're looking to dive into it more deeply in the weeks to come. We are just getting started. Peace.